So, we live in very interesting times. There are 7.5 billion people on this planet. We have a carbon dioxide, atmospheric carbon dioxide of over 400 parts per million. 90% of the big fish in the ocean have been pulled out. We've either eaten them or we've killed them for other purposes. So we ask ourselves, does nature work for us humans? Or do us humans have a responsibility to work for nature? In my career, my entire life, I have never met anybody so passionate or who cares more about nature and all things living than Dr. Reese Halter. So let's give him a big welcome. Dr. Reese.
Thank you very much. So tonight, science is wondrous. Nature is filled with surprises and inspirations. Nature has been time-tested for a couple of billion years. Actually, it's flawless. Actually, everything has a role, a purpose. There's no unemployment, everybody eats, and everything in every ecosystem is interdependent. What a system for us to mimic. Some of my colleagues, our colleagues, do that. Tonight, we're going to explore a couple of things, but mostly the theme here is we live on a gorgeous planet. It's our home. Fact is, it's our only home. The fact is, irrespective of your beliefs, it is the Garden of Eden. We have everything here. We have water, we have air, we have food, we have soil, we have oceans. It's up to each of us, collectively, individually, collectively, and globally, to take care of our home. Because we have everything here. It's just a matter of how we take care of it. We live on the water planet. In fact, 95% of all the living space, we call it the biosphere, is the ocean. The oceans are the cradle of life. The oceans are filled with mystery and creatures, many of which we haven't even discovered yet. On our planet, currently, ladies and gentlemen, we're taking 160% more than our globe can give us. You don't need to be a quantum physicist to understand that we continue to do the things that we're doing doesn't have a happy ending at all. So, I predict in this room that many of you, as the years go by, if not all, will be very much a part of the solutions. Because there's two things only that people do very well. We solve problems and we make tools. It's pretty difficult for most of you to understand these things that we carry. First of all, they could power the Apollo, the first rockets. They could power every one of them because the complexity in these chips are phenomenal. But they're fairly recent. That's difficult for, well, it's impossible for you to understand that, but in our short lives, they've moved on to the floor. And the point is that there's nothing that the human mind can't solve. Before I talk of the climate in crisis, and make no mistake, the climate, it is in crisis. Before I talk numbers on temperature, seas, we have a problem, ladies and gentlemen, Houston. We're in the midst of the sixth great extinction, and it's human-driven. Make no mistake. The African herd, the elephants, are a poster for our problem right this very second. A couple of hundred years ago, there were 20 million elephants in Africa. A couple of weeks ago, my colleagues, funded by one of the co-founders of Microsoft, Paul Allen, did a survey. In January, most of the conservation biologists dealing with big animals, believed there were 700,000 elephants left. We were shocked to discover that there's only 352,000 elephants left. We're losing 56 elephants every day. Now, before we point fingers at different people or countries, United States of America is the second biggest ivory consumer on the globe. This must change. It's also equally stunning. Last week, or may have been the week before, in Hawaii, the ICUN met. And our colleagues revealed something even more shocking than what's happening on land. In the oceans, we are emptying the oceans of all big critters. All. In the 5 great mass extinctions before, that's never happened. Smaller species in their entirety have gone extinct. Never all the big species. Not since the dawning of reproductive life 1.1 billion years ago. This must change. If nothing else, our species must coexist. We've become the super predator, and we are on a tear that this planet has never experienced. So what can you do? These are big things I've just thrown at you. Here's the fact, ladies and gentlemen. We're all powerful people. When we band together, we are an unstoppable force for goodness. What can you do? Oh, you can do lots. Number 1, never buy ivory. No-brainer. Number 2, when you get a chance, demonstrate. Demonstrate. Take part in a physical demonstration. It means a lot. Start a conservation group. Join a conservation group. Start a cause on Facebook. The point is, there's lots each of us can do. A lot of what we're faced with today boils down to habits. It's not difficult to change a habit. Maybe it's irritating, maybe it's change, but change is opportunity in disguise. And, as you'll learn, change is the only constant in life. You can either go with the flow, or you can kick and scream. And I encourage you to go with the flow. This we must also remember. Knowing what we know right now, that we are in the midst of the 6th great extinction, it means we must not go quietly into the impoverished future. We must not go quietly into the impoverished future. Because the strength of all ecosystems, whether it's forests, whether it's coral reefs, whether it's the ocean floor, depends on the biological diversity, the biodiversity, the rich tapestry of life. That has been time tested. You know, every organism has another organism breathing down its neck, as it were. Competition is what has created nature and this flawless system. It's exquisite. All right, let's get stuck into it. Currently on planet Earth, as most of you know, all of you know, we're powered predominantly by coal. Matter is neither created nor destroyed. It is simply transformed. Hello! You take a solid, a chunk of coal the size of my fist, you burn it, it turns into a gas. That gas predominantly is carbon dioxide. It traps heat. This is not difficult. This is very real. However, coal, ladies and gentlemen, emits mercury vapor. We have tripled in mercury vapor in our oceans to over 80,000 metric tons. Mercury in the ocean, when it becomes active, is methyl mercury. It's sticky. Means it gets in us, animals, stays there. We're apex predators, right? I said we are super predators. We're apex, we're at the top. That means when we eat animals, and they've got poison, it biomagnifies up the food chain. Sometimes 100,000 times. I am mortified and embarrassed as an adult on this planet to tell you or to warn you. I'm not telling you, I'm warning you. If you eat anything from the oceans, they're filled with persistent organic pollutants. Methyl mercury, DDT, PCBs, phenols, phthalates, tributans, the latest greatest anti-hull fouling paints, insecticides. Oh dear. Be very, very careful. We have to turn this around, and we have the capability to turn it around. How much coal are we burning, if you can envision? Because these are all numbers, and the bigger the numbers, I guess people get more impressed. I don't know. I've never sat and counted a million anything. I couldn't even imagine a billion because I can't count a million. We're burning 71 million dump trucks of coal a year. It has to change because we are into a whole new world in terms of climate. The oceans, one of the very important things I want everyone to remember in science, scientists are exact. That's what we do. We count stuff. We don't sort of approximate here, there, or anywhere. We are precise. We're precision driven. That's what we do. Our colleagues at Lawrence Livermore Lab earlier this year, calculated how much energy is in our oceans from burning fossil fuels. You see, the oceans, it turns out, have stored 92% of all the energy that has been burned. So the number that they came up with was 300 zetajoules. And that goes back to 1750, 1775. Since 1996, we've burned half of that, 150 zetajoules. So you're saying to yourself, well, what's that? How can we get a measure of what a zetajoule is or how much energy is in the ocean? This much we know. from 1996-97 onward, it's the equivalent of one Hiroshima-style atomic bomb being detonated every second for 75 straight years. Our oceans are broiling. The oceans drive our climate. That means for us, on a daily basis, our weather. The oceans are so warm that the seasons in the oceans have changed. The critters, what's left of them, are very, very confused. And from the fish stocks to the sea turtles to plankton and everything in between, they're now racing as much as 10 degrees latitude in either hemisphere towards the cooler poles. The oceans are really seriously warm. Not sure if you saw it today, but we haven't seen what we're seeing right now today, I don't think ever, at least on my watch of 35 years. We have a super typhoon with sustained winds of 165 miles an hour and gusts of 200 miles an hour, a top-end Category 5, slamming through the Japanese islands en route to South Korea and will land tomorrow night on Japan's mainland. And we have a Category 4 Hurricane Matthew that has flattened Haiti and is en route at this very second to Jamaica. Hurricanes and super typhoons draw all their energy from warm oceans. This much we do know. We will experience more wild, you could call it extreme. I wrote a book called Wild Weather, so I kind of like wild. We will experience more wild weather, and the frequency of events will increase. What do? Well, we future-proof is what we do. We future-proof our towns and our cities. Hello, that's jobs. It's also switching away from fossil fuels. I have a bear bug with fossil fuels for a few reasons. One, fracking is poisoning our fresh water. What kind of a lunatic poisons fresh water in a warming world? In our country, in the last 11 years, just so you know, we've dropped 270,000 fracking wells. 10 million Americans live within 1 mile of those fracking wells. What are we doing? And if that isn't bad enough, because it's poisoning our fresh water, and by the way, we do know that the fresh water is being unequivocally poisoned. The EPA started a study in Pavilion, Wyoming, and kind of sort of dropped it around 2011-12. Our colleagues at Stanford University picked up the ball late last year and showed that the fracking had poisoned the entire community water of Pavilion, Wyoming. But if that isn't disturbing enough, and it really is for me, we've allowed as much as 1,200 offshore fracking wells to take place in the Gulf of Mexico. The Gulf of Mexico is really close to my heart. In April, late April of 2010, I got a telephone call from MSNBC, and they said, we have a little problem. I said, oh, really? What happened? It was the Deepwater Horizon catastrophe, and I spent almost 2 months going back and forth in the Gulf trying to explain and deal with all of these beautiful creatures covered in oil. Not only is the Gulf toxic still today, it's very toxic because 1,200 fracking wells in the Gulf right this second are discharging all of the wastewater. All of it is going into the Gulf. The wastewater is the water that's mixed with the fracking chemicals, and it is toxic for marine mammals, for our sea turtles, for our critically endangered eastern Atlantic bluefin tuna. I'll show you a picture. I love bluefin tunas. They're the pinnacle of the sea for me and for life as we know it. And that is unacceptable. Now, let's say you're not hip on the oceans. That's fine. Tell you what you are hip on. Everybody's hip on this. Guess what? We all breathe oxygen. Over the last 30 years, this is taken from Cape Grim, the northwestern tip of Tasmania. Go to Australia. Tasmania is so beautiful. It's an emerald jewel with really tall, big trees. And the critters are all foreign, and the birds are everywhere. By the way, when was the last time you heard a bird? We're missing 1.5 billion birds in North America. The birds are leaving us. I love birds. Working forests, I listen, the birds. And off La Jolla, our coast in SoCal, each year we've been losing for the last 30 years 19 oxygen molecules per 1 million. It's approximately 600 molecules. Is it enough to bother us during the day? No. However, 70 million Americans suffer from sleep disorders. I maintain, and some of our other colleagues in medicine maintain, that as the oxygen levels decrease, we're going to have a harder time sleeping. Unacceptable. The other thing that's unacceptable about the fossil fuels, if they're so great, why is it globally that they're receiving $5.6 trillion in subsidies? What? We're paying the biggest, wealthiest polluters to kill our planet? Really? Carbon dioxide, just another little problem. It hasn't topped 400 for the last 66 million years. 66 million years ago, these guys, T-Rex. By the way, one bite of T-Rex, 500 pounds. That's how good the getting was. The oceans 66 million years ago, ladies and gentlemen, were 75 feet higher. What? It's a problem. Should the oceans go 3 meters, what's that, 10, 11 feet? We're pretty much out of commission because most cities are on the coast. We are playing in a very, very dangerous zone. And here's the thing. We know this. Being human is we make mistakes. We all make mistakes. I've made more mistakes than any of you times a lot. But I'm happy to say most of them I've corrected. Because if you make a mistake, that's human. If you knowingly continue to make the same mistakes, well, the end is not happy. We are polluting our planet with these fossil fuels, and we have the technologies and the ability to derive energy from the sun, from the wind, from the ocean waves, and we do it from geothermal. It's a no-brainer. But in business, if you pay somebody $5.6 trillion to continue to do what they're doing, it's pretty hard to compete against that. I maintain we have to save nature now. We have to save nature now. It's our life support systems. This is what is at stake. It's a big fight and it's a big challenge, but it's very doable, right? Because for every problem, there are 3 solutions. I want everybody to remember that. When you're faced with a problem, there are at least 3 solutions. That's what it is to be human, to use our brains. All of you, I'm happy to say, you're far smarter than I ever was at your age, and there's a very good reason, because the problems are bigger. So, bigger problems, bigger brains. Welcome to the 21st century. I want to show you, zero in on three areas. My friends, the bees, then we'll move on to trees, and then we'll finish with the seas. This much we know. At 1 degree C, I want to share with you, a little over 1 C, I want to share with you some of the disruptions that are happening. But before I do that, I want to introduce you to our friends, the bees. There's over 20,000 kinds of bees, and there may be another 20,000 to discover. That's one of the greatest things of science we get to discover. And by the way, it's opening your eyes. It's being aware of what's around you. When you go into the ocean, when you go into the forest, when you go into a kelp forest, when you go onto a coral reef, it's what you see. It's how your brain processes patterns. Because that's, in essence, what ecology is. We study patterns, right? And you start to see enough patterns, and you go, oh, I guess that's how this works under these circumstances, right? Never lose your luster and desire to be blown away by how wondrous nature is. You might be pleasantly pleased to know that bees and humans, honeybees and humans, share a lot of similarities. Did you know that honeybees like a good 8-hour sleep? I know I do. Honeybees like a smorgasbord, right? They like a lot of different pollens and a lot of different nectars. I bet if we went around this room, a lot of people would say, yeah, I like a lot of different foods. I'm not going to eat oatmeal for the rest of my life, and that's that. A lot of people in this room like to dance. Bees, honeybees, communicate by dancing. Professor von Fritsch received the Nobel laureate 1971 in medicine and physiology. They just gave it out yesterday. And he won it because he spent his entire life deciphering how honeybees communicate. And they dance. And they're very specific in their dances. These are extraordinary creatures. How extraordinary? Well, they have two very large compound eyes, one you can see, and they have 3 on the top of their heads, tiny little ones, and the top of their heads turns out that irrespective of whether it's sunny or cloudy, they're able to detect UV, shorter rays, invisible to our eyes, but if you outside, you know, you get a burn, you can get a skin burn. And they're able to guide themselves, and when they dance, they use the angle of the sun and the flower, and they dance in the dark, and they're able to precisely communicate where flowers are, where water is, because they need water just like we need water, clean water, and where tree resin is, because they make something called propolis, a powerful glue, which turns out not only is potent at removing herpes, oral herpes, but for men that are afflicted with prostate cancer, it's a powerful medicine. It's a bee medicine. The bees have the lion's share, 20,000 known species, of pollinating the plant world. Over 80% of all plants, it's over at least 200,000 plus, the bees are responsible for pollinating. The bees are in trouble, and I'm going to show you in a second why. But in the meantime, these little creatures are inspiring the next generation robotics. See that big compound eye? Well, they can do something that we can't. They can fly, and they can see an individual tree, and they can see the whole forest all at once. Wow! They've got approximately 1 million neurons in their tiny little brains. They might be tiny, but those brains pack a powerful punch because we have approximately 1 million neurons in just one of our retinas. The next generation robots will be able to see and decipher the environment all around them based on how the honeybee's eye and brain works. That's pretty good to me. Bees, give us our food. I don't know about you, but I sure like food. Apples. There's over 7,500 varieties of apples on our planet. Apples are loaded with flavonoids, antioxidants, and extraordinarily important plant fiber. Apples help prevent diabetes, cancer, hypertension, and coronary or heart disease. How good is that? I strongly recommend, as the old idiom says, an apple a day, in fact, keeps the doctor away. So, honeybees make a lot of honey. Honey is their energy. That's all they have. Right? That 1 teaspoon of honey is the end point of 12 honeybees flying nonstop for 3 weeks, combined distance 6,000 miles. They're prodigious workers because at the end of the 3 weeks they die. They die because they've worn their wings out. They work all right. Honey in America is the backbone, 300 million pounds. And we have to import 150 million pounds of honey into our country every year for breads, pastries, beverages, and sauces. And it's not just that honey is delicious, because it is. Honey is a powerful medicine. My colleagues just revealed that honey is helping to fight urinary infections in hospital patients that have been hooked up to catheters, right? What happens on the catheter, these little plastic tubes, is the bacteria forms, right? And so when we dilute honey, the honey breaks down the biofilm and prevents any bacteria from entering the human body. How good is that? Yes! 100 million, almost a third of our country suffers from pain. Pain medicine is big, big business. Well, you may be pleasantly surprised to know that bee venom, honey bee venom, is a potent weapon against pain. It's an anti-inflammatory of an epic proportion, melatonin and apamin, and it also smooths the nerve transmission. Apitherapy, or honeybee venom, is a legal drug in 12 European countries. I predict it'll be a drug here pretty soon. The bees are in great trouble. Over the last 10 years, we've lost almost 1 trillion. Again, these numbers are just 1 trillion honeybees. For those interested, approximately living at any one moment on our planet, I did a calculation. I wrote a book that sold well. I wrote 2 books, actually, on bees. And at any one moment, there's 1.7 trillion honeybees living on our planet to feed almost 5 billion people. It's a lot of mouths. We've lost almost 1 trillion. The latest, greatest chemicals are off the charts toxic. They're called systemic chemicals. That means that they're in the system of the plant. We dunk the seeds rather than mostly spray. They're called neonicotinoids, abbreviated neonics. They are so powerful that when bees encounter them, all bees, not just honeybees, the other interesting thing is, although we keep bees and we put bees on the fields to pollinate the crops, nature and all of the other bees that are native to North America and the world, we have over 5,000 different kinds of native bees in North America. It's big. They also pollinate the fields. They also die. When the bees encounter the neonicotinoids, they lose their minds and they shake to death. It is very similar to Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. And when these poisons, when they go from the plant, so what happens is this. I'll give you the inside track. The seeds are dunked in the neonic poison. When the seed coat breaks and the root apical sinks into the earth and the plant starts to grow, it knows it has the poison in it. What does it do? It stores it in its greatest dumping ground, the vacuole. The poisons are in the vacuole when corn and soy and cotton, the three big ones in our nation, when they flower, they push the neonicotinoids into the nectar. The bee pulls into the flower, you see, B101, takes the nectar. It's a sweet substance. It dehydrates it, mixes it with a couple enzymes in its gut, and turns it into honey. Bees are drawn to the nectar to make honey. They use the pollen to take back to the hive because pollen is loaded in protein. That's what builds brains and strong autoimmune systems of the little larvae bees. What happens is we plunk these boxes, our hives, down into the central fields. The fields are all one species. The bees finish off what they're eating, and I just told you that bees, just like us, like smorgasbords, so they finish off with the blueberries and they go, wonder what's over there or over there. They have a walkabout, or in their case, they fly over there. The fields are either corn or soy. They get near this stuff and they die. When the flowers dehiss, when they dry up and fall down to the earth, the neonicotinoids go in the soils. When the neonicotinoids go in the soils, all of the creepy crawlies, the scorpions, the millipedes, the worms, the centipedes, they die. Wonder what happens then? Well, the meadow birds that eat the wriggly stuff in the soil, their populations have plummeted. I just told you we're missing 1.5 billion birds. Then, because nature is all connected, the goshawks, they're predators. They're avian predators at the top of the food chain, or near the top. There's no meadow birds, their populations have plummeted. What are we doing? I'm going to show you very quickly an exquisite nature's alternative, because nature's got this worked out. In the meantime, our bees are dying, and I'm not happy. That's my friend Paul Stamets. Paul Stamets is a very, very, very cool man. Paul Stamets is a mushroom guy. Paul Stamets has been working, like myself, his whole life with mushrooms. Paul and his group have come up with a terrific way to work with nature, not against her. They take spores from the polypore mushrooms, they put them in solution, ladies and gentlemen, they put them on the field, and you know what happens? It confers resistance into the plants. That means the plants get like Arnie Schwarzenegger used to be, big and beefy, not really, but they get stronger, and the insects get to live, but the insects don't attack the plants. And we don't put poisons into the biosphere. Currently, each year, ladies and gentlemen, we're putting 5 billion pounds of just insecticides into the biosphere. A couple billion of that are neonicotinoids. These poisons are really terrible. Nature has got a solution right there. On to our trees. Trees are remarkable. Trees have been on our planet for over 350 billion years. Trees, like this big tree, a giant sequoia, or a young'un, it's not really a giant in its size yet, they can live for 3,000 years. If we look at 1 ton, if we take a ton of that wood, for every 1 ton of that big tree, it sucked 1.5 tons of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, and it's given us 1 ton of oxygen. Trees, our forests, give us more than 1 out of every 3 breaths of air wherever you live on our planet. Trees are the lungs of our planet. Trees and forests are not just made up of trees. Guess what? That's where the homes of critters are. I want you to remember this. It's a hard fact. When animals lose their habitat, they die. They can't just mingle over to the next forest and start a new family. It doesn't work like that. Habitat is precious. We're losing precious habitat, and that is unacceptable. Trees are also true. Forests are also unbelievable bastions of fresh water. Over 35% of all cities on planet Earth, over 35% get all their drinking water from our forests. And let us not forget that some of the most powerful medicines that fight heart disease and cancers and diabetes, which is heart disease, come from our forests. So, at 1 degree, at a tickle over 1 degree, this is, now I'm not going to point fingers because it's counterproductive, but I want to tell you one thing. At over 1 degree C, forests on every forested continent, that would be all continents except Antarctica, because there are no trees there currently, forests on all forested continents are dying. Hello? This is very, very serious. Droughts and insect infestations are leveling our forests. This is 1 degree C. We know this. So I'm not going to ever get past this number. We know this. Approximately 30 of my colleagues at the International Union for Forest Research Organization, our colleagues, I know them personally but they're our colleagues. Approximately 30 of our colleagues did a paper in 2009, and they concluded, these were some of the top forest biologists on planet Earth, that should this planet exceed 2.5 C, we may very well lose the entire storage carbon capacity of our forests. What does that mean? That means endgame. That means forests cannot, as we know them, make a living after 2.5 C. What are we doing, ladies and gentlemen? This is very serious. At a little over 1 degree C, welcome to California. In the last, most of them are brown. In the last 12 months, in our state alone, 26 million of our conifers are dead. Since 2010, that's 66 million trees in our state. Here's the thing. In nature, you see, you all know this as young budding scientists. Temperature is very, very important. We use the System International, the metric system, first of all, because metrics are considerably easier to work out. It's 0, 0, 0, right? The metric system has got a lot of benefits. We know that at 0.1 of a degree centigrade in biology is a very big deal. 1 degree C is off the charts. The best comparison I can give you, the difference is 1 on the Richter scale of an earthquake versus 10. That's what we're dealing with. When the temperatures have risen, and make no mistake, they've risen across the West, in America, in North America, trillions of our native, that means these beetles, these bark beetles live here, they're native, or fancy word is indigenous, they've exploded. What does that mean? Well, pretty much in the last 15 years, we've lost 30 billion trees. It's an inconceivable number. As you see, the red patch is the dead patch. And as you see the blue in the north of British Columbia, the beetles have snuck over that. The yellow arrow is the northern Rocky Mountains. They've never before ever been found on the east side of the northern Rocky Mountains. Not only are they there, they found a fungus that can tolerate the colder temperatures, and they have adapted to small jack pines. The concern now is that they will move across the entire top of North America, the Emerald Crown or the boreal forests. We need trees, ladies and gentlemen. We need trees, and we need to be very sensitive to what our forests are showing us. Wake up. Now, in our cities, trees are gold. Trees are gold because here's what you'll discover. When you live in a home or a residence that has a tree or several trees, first of all, hello, it's cooler. Second of all, you've got air. Third of all, they filter the pollutants, and they provide homes for critters like bees and all kinds of other things. And surprise, surprise, you're healthier. We know, even in our city of Los Angeles, where there are no trees in suburbs, people are a lot sicker. This isn't high physics here. This is common sense. So, what have we been doing? Let's get on to the solutions. I've mired you in the reality. Cities around the world, while governments have been stalling and futzking around and doing whatever they think they're doing and greenwashing, the cities of the United States and elsewhere, but the cities started in earnest in 2007 to begin to future-proof. I show you this lacebark elm, Chinese lacebark elm, because it's the millionth tree that was planted in New York City 2 years ahead of schedule. Former Mayor Bloomberg started this initiative, and they planted that was planted last year. These are solutions. Now, the tricky part, of course, the challenging part is to select the right tree species, because it's warming up so quickly, you can't have tree species that cannot tolerate the heat. Some cities, like Phoenix, are in big trouble. Now, somebody, 2007, Felix Finkbinder, the young fellow with a microphone in hand, he lived in Munich, Germany. And Felix was very concerned about trees. So you know what he did? He started a club. And Felix's club planted 50 million trees, and he challenged the children of our planet and respective countries to join and to plant trees. 8 years later, 9 years later, Felix is running the United Nations program, the Environment Program, for the Billion Tree Campaign. I tell you this because anyone in this room can do anything. When you focus on something, what you focus on is what you get. And we need you as problem solvers to be out of the box and to think. To think. Thinking is a great thing. It's underrated. Here's my friends, the seas. Let me tell you, I love our oceans. The oceans are full of mystery. The oceans are full, or once upon a time, were full of whales. If you want to be wad, if you want to have your mind expanded beyond a galaxy, go on the ocean, get a hydrophone, get near any of the humpbacks, and listen to them sing. Oh, they change their language every decade. They sing for a living. They sing while they hunt. They sing to serenade. They sing to communicate. Make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, the cetaceans, the whales, the dolphins, the porpoises are sentient creatures. We just don't know their language, but they have languages. These kids in front of you are sperm whales. Sperm whales. Sperm whales have brains 5 times bigger than humans. Sperm whales can dive 2 miles deep. Ladies and gentlemen, this will blow your minds. If you take a car and you drop a car 2 miles deep, guess what? Every 33 feet is an atmosphere. Crushed to the size of an attaché case. The males are 55 feet long and almost 60 tons. How do you go 2 miles deep? How do you hold your breath for 45 minutes? And what are they doing? Playing around? I don't think so. They're hunting. It's the greatest fight on our planet. They're chasing colossal squid from my body to the wall with 100 tentacles, retractable claws, suction cups with dinner plates that are razor. Their brains send echolocation. The most sophisticated sonar that rivals anything in a submarine. They're hunting at temperatures of 35 degrees. 35 degrees, and it's pitch dark. And they're hunting for the colossal squid. And guess what? They don't see the 40-foot squid. They see the keratin, the fingernail material on the tip of the beak. It's like trying to find a needle in a zillion haystacks. And that's what these guys do. Our species has been ruthless to the whales because over the last 200 years, we've murdered 5 million of them. All of their populations are epically low, very, very low. But I will tell you this, we need the whales because the whales are helping us with their flocculent fecal plumes. Their poo is rich in iron and nitrogen, and it is regrowing the phytoplankton. Because here's the hard facts, and they're hard facts. The oceans that are broiling are missing 40% of the phytoplankton. The phytoplankton is responsible for the basis of the entire marine system, but it also gives us almost 2 out of every 3 breaths of air. The whales are regrowing the phytoplankton. They are paramount. There are several countries, Japan, Norway, and Iceland, that continue to kill whales despite a 1982 moratorium. It's not on. The oceans are that acidic that the pteropods, the free-swimming snails, 53% of the free-swimming snails off the coast of the United States are severely melting. This is big beans. The National Atmospheric Lab in Boulder released this 3 months ago. By 2030, there will be large swaths of the Pacific Ocean void of oxygen from the climate in crisis. Very real. The pinnacle of 30,000 kinds of fish on our planet are the bluefin tunas. The bluefin tunas are speed. The bluefin tunas have hearts 10 times the size of any other fish because they can beat a Ferrari off the line. A 1,000-pound bluefin tuna has to eat 25% of its body weight every day. These are fish that have become warm-blooded, but with a counter-current circulation system. The oceans are where all three species of bluefin tuna are critically endangered. The Mitsubishi Corporation intends to corner the bluefin tuna market, and unless something happens in the next decade, I'm sad to report, they will be extinct. They know how to cryopack them. That means they can put them in a pack in cold storage, and they will last in deep freezes for 20 or 25 years. China has developed a taste for sashimi. The Mitsubishi Corporation will make billions of dollars, and this species will have been driven to extinct. The oceans are also filled with 13 million miles, enough to go to the moon and back 27 times with a couple billion hooks. Our oceans are in terrible, terrible, terrible trouble. We can't live on a planet with dead oceans. So one of the things, I'm getting close to the end, one of the things is another young person, Boyan Slat, was 17, 16, 4 years ago, and he was really pissed of the plastics in the ocean. And he should be, and we all should be. There may be as many as 51 trillion pieces of plastics in the ocean. If you eat anything from the ocean, you, ladies and gentlemen, are eating plastics. And they are perfect sponges for all the persistent organic pollutants I told you about. Boyan said, I'm going to fix this. Everybody said, no, you're not. You're a kid, you don't know jack. He said, I'm going to fix it. He's got this is his foundation, Ocean Cleanup. He's maybe 20 years old, your age. And he has launched the first prototype in the North Atlantic. He's using the gyre, the free-flowing movement of the ocean, with a big V like a boomerang to trap the plastic. It's pulled into the center, and every X amount of days when the center fills up, barges will come in. He has got a heck of a good plan here. Now, last year in America, 400,000 people donned the cap and gown. In Australia, 30,000 people donned the cap and gown, all from repurposed plastic bottles. 12 million plastic bottles. When you graduate in 4 years, falls well, you'll be wearing plastic in your cap and gowns. There's no problem that we can't solve on this planet. Adidas and Parley for the Oceans have signed a great contract. Ultra Boost sneakers, you'll see them next year. There's 1 million sneakers that will be sold next year. Ultra Boost Adidas Parley for the Ocean, from ocean plastics, including what Sea Shepherd pulled from illegal gill nets off Maldives on Western Africa. These are solutions, ladies and gentlemen. These are commerce. This is real, and it has to be done. I urge you to consider to become a plant-based eater, because the hard facts are we have run out of land to grow feed, to feed cattle and animals in order to feed people. Plant-based is healthy, it's water smart, it's easy, and ladies and gentlemen, it's compassionate. Please, in your day-to-day existence, embrace compassion. It's one of the great things of being human. Lastly, I leave you with the ultimate solution. The highest vibration that a human being can experience is love. Love. Love is the solution. We have it within ourselves, each of us, together, globally, to change the picture. I've painted a pretty harsh picture at very low temperatures. I only snuck to 2.5. Beyond that, it's uninhabitable, and this much we know. We're in a system that doesn't work. That means we need solutions. The solutions will come from this room. I leave you with one last thought. Sir Winston Churchill said, "We make a living from what we get. We make a life from what we give." Take your time the next 4 years at CLU. Explore all kinds of things. Don't miss opportunities to have conversations with your professors, or to join clubs, or to start your own causes. Thank you for your attention. Protect our planet. Yeah, baby.